Everything shifted during your time in the recovery ward. This residence is no longer under your ownership. You have no stake here. Seek alternative accommodations. I stood there, stunned, the incision from my recent procedure aching with every breath. I couldn't fathom those harsh words emanating from my sole daughter, the child I'd poured my entire existence into nurturing. I'd only been away for 4 weeks, sidelined by setbacks from my knee replacement. I arrived back with visions of warmth and reunion, only to face a barricaded entry to the home that Charles and I had painstakingly crafted over 35 years. In that moment, the deception crystallized. It transcended mere displacement from my abode. It unveiled a sinister scheme I was only beginning to unravel. If you've ever pondered the breaking point of a devoted parent, continue on and share in the comments which town you're tuning in from. My release forms rustled in my coat as the rideshare eased up to our timeless Victorian dwelling. 28 days had dragged like an endless void. Post-op infections from my knee surgery had me wrestling with chills and antibiotics while life marched onward without pause. I felt drained yet optimistic about reclaiming my sanctuary. Sanctuary. The 3-level structure Charles and I had revitalized through our decades-long union loomed ahead, kissed by the fading dusk glow. The hydrangeas I'd sown ages ago still flourished along the path, though they begged for pruning after my hiatus. "Assistance with your luggage, ma'am?" the driver inquired, eyeing my walker. "Just to the stoop, thank you," I responded, my throat raspy from the sterile hospital atmosphere. My daughter ought to be anticipating me. The entrance swung wide before we ascended. Emily, my only offspring, framed the threshold, but absent the welcoming grin I'd envisioned. Her countenance bore an unfamiliar chill, detached, unyielding, almost mechanical. Her tone mirrored that impersonal edge. Lingering in the shadows of the foyer, I spied activity in the den. Her spouse, Derek, and what appeared to be his folks. "Emily, what's this about?" I queried, advancing. She obstructed the passage, immovable. "You weren't due until tomorrow." "We had preparations set." The driver deposited my modest valise nearby, picking up on the unease. I settled the fare hastily, regretting his imminent departure. "There's no gentle phrasing for this," Emily pressed on as the vehicle receded. "Circumstances evolved during your inpatient stay. This property isn't yours anymore." A tremor coursed through me, unrelated to my convalescing frame. "What on earth do you mean?" "We've orchestrated relocations. Derek's parents are relocating from Chicago, and this place offers far more room than a single occupant requires. The paperwork's finalized. You'll need to locate new quarters." My thoughts reeled to absorb her declaration. "Paperwork? I'd authorized nothing." "Emily, this is preposterous. Grant me entry to my own home this instant." I edged nearer, relying on the walker. Now Derek materialized beside her. His dark locks were impeccably groomed, and he sported what I instantly identified as Charles's vintage pocket watch, an heirloom from our 30th milestone. "Margaret," he intoned with that contrived warmth I'd grown to discern over time, "we've consolidated your effects. They're crated in the shed. We can dispatch them to your interim spot." From the rear, Derek's kin, Harold and Evelyn Whitaker, surfaced. In our sparse encounters, Harold, broad-shouldered with a commanding presence and peppered beard, had always come off as overbearing. Evelyn, with her sharp features and perpetual scowl, had never masked her contempt for our quaint abode, the very one she now occupied as if entitled. Regrettable it escalated thus, Harold uttered, devoid of remorse. But Emily clarified the setups explicitly. "The transfer's binding." "Binding?" I faltered. "That's ludicrous. I never endorsed a thing." Emily's features tightened. "Power of attorney. Recall those forms you inked pre-op for health directives? They encompassed fiscal affairs, too. The epiphany struck like a gale. Indeed, I'd affixed my name to a sheaf of papers proffered by my daughter amid pre-surgical jitters. Trusting her implicitly, I'd skimmed naught beyond the opener. "You deceived me," I uttered. The phrase rang empty against the treachery's scale. "We're prioritizing the collective good," Derek chimed in. "This estate's burdensome for solo upkeep. Emily's overseen it for ages. Avoid reappearing here," Emily concluded sternly. "We'll forward your items. It's settled." I lingered, propped on my walker, gazing at the daughter I'd reared, the girl who'd heard my nightly tales, the adolescent I'd coached through licensing exams, the woman whose graduate studies I'd funded via overtime. Now, she was an alien in familiar skin. "This violates the law," I murmured faintly. "And you're aware." "It's concluded," she retorted icily. "Don't complicate it." Something fractured within, yet not as they'd anticipated. No sobs, no entreaties. It was a glacial lucidity, a resolve dormant since my tenure auditing corporate ledgers. "Savor it, then," I stated plainly, pivoting. Savor it all. Their baffled expressions at my composure nearly compensated the ruin. Nearly. As I hobbled to the lingering rideshare, I'd wisely requested a hold. I withdrew my device. Not for authorities. Not immediately. That would unfold on my terms. Instead, I dispatched a terse note to Patricia Lawson. Initiate contingency. The suite in central Seattle was stark but sanitary, a provisional haven as I mended and refocused. My fingers quivered as I perched on the mattress edge, fixated on my screen. Patricia responded promptly. "Secure yourself." En route. Patricia Lawson and I shared a bond spanning 45 years, forged in university halls. She'd ascended to a powerhouse attorney, while I'd forged paths in corporate auditing. Post Charles's passing, she'd streamlined my estate with our mutual vigilant ethos. "Backup contingencies are essential," she'd counseled, "particularly with kin and capital." I'd deemed it overcautious then. Now it bordered on prescient. A gentle rap heralded her. Despite the witching hour, Patricia appeared pristine in her bespoke ensemble, her auburn tresses in a signature chignon. Her visage, though, seethed. "Those wretched opportunists," she hissed, embracing me gingerly, attentive to my mending form. "Status, physical or psychological?" I mustered a grin that faltered. "Both viable." She positioned her attaché on the bureau and extracted dossiers with honed precision. "You're upright, a feat. The remainder?" I reclined. "I anticipate awakening from this delirium induced by delirium." Patricia's gaze gentled briefly ere resuming her vocational veneer. "Proceedings are underway. The estate safeguards are ironclad." Charles was thorough. "The conveyance won't endure scrutiny." "Timeline?" I probed. "To nullify this sham? Weeks, perhaps quarters if they resist." She halted. "But Margaret, an addendum. Unearthed in your fiscal reviews." My gut nodded. "Elaborate. Anomalous debits from your holdings amid your confinement." "Substantial ones." She proffered a ledger printout. My auditing acumen flagged the aberrations instantly. 7 outflows summing $310,000, all to alien ledgers, all bearing electronic endorsements allegedly mine, while I languished semi-comatose in recovery. While I fought for coherence, I breathed, the perfidy's depth sinking in. They pilfered not solely my domicile, but siphoned my reserves. "Worse yet," Patricia intoned somberly. My aide preliminarily vetted the Whitakers. Their property advisory firm in Chicago boasts retracted grievances, pre-probe, and Derek's resume lists. Stints at 4 lending entities shuttered for compliance. Breaches. The mosaic cohered with frigid precision. Engaged in lending scams? Patricia affirmed. Likely schemed for eons, exploiting your ailment to hasten. My recollections surged. Derek's escalating curiosity in my finances, Emily's offhand inquiries on my portfolios and associates. The groundwork predated my procedure. Emily, I voiced, the syllable lodging. Her involvement? Patricia's reticence sufficed. I instilled superior ethics, I whispered. Her father did likewise. Individuals morph, Margaret, especially amid avarice, Patricia countered gently yet resolutely. Query your recourse? I sealed my lids, bearing the burden of 69 years erecting vocation, lineage, hearth. Upon reopening, resolve calcified. All, I declared. Reclaim mine, enforce repercussions. Inclusive of Emily. Patricia's brow lifted marginally. No filial shield, I affirmed. She elected. It stung yet voracious. If complicit in illegality, she merits fallout. She concurred, content with my fortitude. Then prudence and tactics. I possess liaisons in federal fiscal enforcement intrigued by our fines. I retain contacts too, I noted, recalling ex-peers. Yet delay haste. They deem me vanquished. A frail elder retreating. Leverage that illusion. What scheme brews? She queried. I retrieved a compact ledger from my satchel, my auditing talisman. Catalog all, every debit, forgery, deceit. Trace funds. Patricia's grin sharpened, evoking our youthful zeal. Subsequently, I echoed, chill resolve surging. Ensnare when unguarded. We sketched the blueprint. My device vibrated with Emily's missive. Mother, require access codes for your portfolios to allocate residual for your welfare. Transmit promptly. I displayed it to Patricia, who grimaced. Response? Kneel presently, she advised. Induced doubt, anxiety. I assented, sidelining the gadget. The erstwhile Margaret would have hastened reconciliation, peace at expense. That variant perished at the pilfered threshold. This iteration strategized protractedly. Sequestered in lodging, I realigned with confidant and counsel Patricia, unveiling jolts. Beyond commandeering my abode, they'd deplete. Sequestered in lodging, I realigned with confidant and counsel Patricia, unveiling jolts. Beyond commandeering my abode, they depleted my coffers during my incapacity. Probing the Whitakers' enterprise unearthed dubious annals, compelling the agonizing admission my daughter entangled in nefarious depths. Physically recuperating yet spiritually steeled, I opted subtlety over confrontation, permitting their victory delusion, whilst amassing their demise dossier. You must witness this, Patricia urged, proffering her portable across the suite's workstation, 5 days post-expulsion. We'd upgraded to a discreet long-term rental, transacting anonymously to evade trails. My vigor incrementally restored, though psychic scars festered. The display exhibited district land deeds. I scrutinized. 5th entry upward, Patricia directed. My gaze bulged. The Thompson clan, 3 doors away, divested 4 months prior. Acquirer, Whitaker Holdings, LLC. No fluke, I muttered. Further, Patricia scrolled. The Patel household opposite transferred last fortnight to identical entity, and the elderly duo at the Bend inked a pact with said buyer. Acquiring the quadrant? I exhaled, the ploy materializing. Rationale? Patricia unveiled a rezoning petition lodged with municipal planners 3 weeks hence, during my ward tenure. They petitioned to pivot the sector from domestic to hybrid commercial residential. The revelation winded me. Our enclave bordered Seattle's burgeoning tech hub. Rezoned valuations would soar. Utilizing my residence as command post whilst accruing adjacent parcels, I deduced. Upon threshold dominance and forced shift, valuations quadruple minimally, Patricia concurred. Market-wise, prospective yields of $25 to $30 million. My auditing prowess gauged the enormity, yet queried seed funds. Whence the Inception capital? Patricia's mien shadowed. Alarming facet. My sleuth pal delved logs. Whitaker's Chicago legacy, targeting fragile proprietors, predominantly retirees or indebted, via exploitative financing to usurp estates. Lending predation, I recalled from professional lore. Precisely. Dangle irresistible restructures, falsify valuations, rig terms for default, foreclose, acquire undervalued. I envisioned neighbors, many seniors on pensions, entrenched in lifelong homes, ideal prey. And my ledgers, the siphoned sums bootstrapped acquisitions, bridging till fruition. The machination's ruthlessness asphyxiated. Beyond my domain and wealth, it aimed communal demolition. Allies who'd condoled at Charles's right delivered sustenance in widowhood. And Emily? I ventured, the specter persisting. Her depth? Patricia wavered ere unveiling footage. Captured a month back at Chicago Central Trust. Surveillance depicted Emily and Derek conferring with a financier. Timestamp 3 days post my op whilst I slumbered drugged in ICU. They accessed my vault, I discerned, identifying the institution housing my vitals. Affirmative per registry. Patricia validated. Extracted deeds, trusts. I shuttered lids deluged. My daughter, once equity zealot in games, restorer of found fortunes. How transmuted? Additional, Patricia murmured, proffering correspondence. SEC allies forwarded. Missives betwixt Derek and Harold, 9 months vintage. Coded discourse on sector parcels, profiling susceptible holders. My abode flagged as nexus post-seizure. A chilling verbiage. Daughter reticent yet compliant. Matriarch improbable full rebound from impending procedure. Expedited agenda, impending procedure? I echoed hoarsely. My knee wasn't urgent. Booked quarters ahead. Margaret, Patricia cautioned, bracing. They anticipated. Relied on vulnerability. We can't confirm Emily's full cognizance, she ventured. Cease, I interjected, rejecting palliatives. She grasped sufficient. Coveted my estate funds, plotted amid my frailty. The verity's sting eclipsed surgical agony. My progeny betrayed premeditatedly, callously. I rose, disregarding knee's remonstrance, approaching the pain. Seattle's horizon shimmered twilight. Apathetic to my saga. Your intent? Patricia inquired tenderly. I wheeled, conviction absolute. Equity, I avowed. For self, victims past and prospective. Reclaim my domain, Patricia assented gravely. Then stealth. Their triumph presumption yields ambush edge. Excellent, I responded. Strategy coalesced, for I'm poised to deliver life's astonishment. Perusing land logs with Patricia, a harrowing motif surfaced. Whitaker's systematically annexed neighborhood abodes, priming lucrative rezoning gambit. Agony amplified uncovering Emily's not mere accomplice but months aware, perhaps sinking usurpation with my op. With environs and venerable neighbors imperiled by their rapacious ploy, my tenacity solidified. Transcended personal restitution, halting elaborate swindle ere further casualties. And I embodied the ideal dismantler. Margaret, certainty on this. Patricia fretted, observing my cosmetic ritual in the lavatory glass. Your knee mends yet. 4 weeks bedridden, impotent, I countered, lipstick precise. Impotence ends, 10 days post-ouster. Patricia and I dissected Whitaker modus operandi. Chicago Trail, ravaged elders via draconian pacts, counterfeits. Now Phoenix facsimile, my home epicenter. Timing critical, I reiterated, appraising my reflection. Charcoal skirt suit, subtle gems evoked seasoned auditor, not routed senior. Operatives poised, Patricia verified. Await cue. Post-scheme revelation, we proffered proofs to FBI Economic Infraction Squad. They'd tracked Whitaker's eons. Deficient insider ingress we proffered. Accord. Defer apprehensions for augmented substantiation. I prioritized asset reclamation. Recall necessitate tangible validation of identity, fiscal misuse. I enumerated tactics. Ledger breaches, forgeries, overt scheme admission. Absent, they allege voluntary yield. Patricia glanced chronometer. Derek's gym session commences shortly. Out hours. Harold, Evelyn at distant appraisal. Emily, per itinerary, office till 6. Superb. My daughters wrote patterns, once charming, now tactical boon. I inhaled deeply. Commence. Rideshare deposited blocks distant. I ambled deliberately, Walker feigning debility over necessity. Enclave unaltered. Manicured plots, heritage edifices, the ancient maple where Emily swung. Yet tainted by clandestine rot, nearing home, alterations evident. Hydrangeas uprooted, supplanted by bland shrubs. Veranda settees Charles and I refurbished, vanished. Metamorphosis commenced, effacing our legacy. I bypassed facade, opting alley ingress to pantry, overlooked in surgical rush, unsecured. Our covert, Emily's adolescent escapade portal, unbeknownst to her knowledge. Latch yielded noiselessly. I infiltrated, detecting alien timbre from Charles's library. Trailing, I paused at a jar portal. Thompson closure Friday. Harold's baritone. Yields 45% dominion. Patel estate. Stranger, probable associate. Settled. Leveraged Hayes credentials for backing. Immaculate. Fist-clenched Walker. Exploiting my repute for machinations. Precise evidentiary quarry. I engaged recorder air ingress. Tableau petrified. Harold at Charles's heirloom bureau. Cohort at Sill, Agape. Greetings, Harold. I serene. Conferring in my sanctum? Margaret, he rallied, rising. Unanticipated. Entry method? Via portal, I quipped. To my lawful estate. His partner shifted uneasily, but Harold composed. We presumed you'd relocated. This intrusion, I interjected mildly. In my domain? Elucidate the Patel financing via my credentials. Harold blanched, glancing cohort. Misunderstanding. Emily managed with forgeries, I pressed. And rezoning? Neighborhood acquisition? My funds seeded it all. The associate bolted for exit, but I barred with Walker. Fleeing? FBI might intrigue in your discourse. Harold's facade crumbled. You eavesdropped? That's inadmissible. Recorded, I corrected. And federal probes adore such candor. Sirens wailed distant, crescendoing. Patricia's signal dispatched. As agents swarmed cuffing duo, Emily and Derek arrived, summoned perhaps by alarm. Their horror at my orchestration, priceless. In ensuing months, indictments reigned. Fraud, forgery, embezzlement. Emily complicit faced charges, our rift irreparable. I reclaimed home, aided neighbors resist, testified to thwart scheme, yet victory bittersweet. Betrayal's scar lingered, but from ashes I rebuilt, stronger, vigilant, a testament to resilience. Eleanor Whitaker, a resilient woman in her late 60s, had always prided herself on her independence. Widowed for over a decade after losing her husband, Thomas, to a sudden heart attack, she had built a life of quiet strength in their sprawling Victorian home in the suburbs of Seattle. The house, filled with memories of family holidays and laughter, was her sanctuary. But lately, that sanctuary had been invaded by shadows of doubt and betrayal. It started subtly. Her daughter, Sophia Langford, had married into the affluent Harrington family 5 years ago. Sophia's husband, Marcus Harrington, came from old money. His parents, Victor and Helena Harrington, owned a string of real estate firms across the Pacific Northwest. At first, Eleanor welcomed them with open arms, hosting lavish dinners and even helping with the down payment on Sophia and Marcus's first home. But after Eleanor's recent hip surgery following a bad fall, things changed. During her recovery, Sophia had convinced her to sign a power of attorney, just in case, citing Eleanor's vulnerability. What Eleanor didn't know was that this document would be weaponized against her. Weeks later, she returned home from the hospital to find her locks changed and her belongings packed in the garage. Sophia and Marcus, backed by Victor's legal team, claimed the house was now under a family trust for Eleanor's own good. They insisted she move to a senior living facility in Tacoma, far from her friends and familiar neighborhood. Devastated but determined, Eleanor sought help from her old friend and attorney Lydia Monroe. Lydia, a sharp-minded lawyer with a no-nonsense attitude, uncovered discrepancies in the financial records. It turned out the Harringtons were using Eleanor's impeccable credit history and banking details to secure loans for shady property developments, flipping undervalued lots in Seattle's booming market, often through fraudulent appraisals and zoning manipulations. As Eleanor delved deeper, she learned of a larger scheme. Victor Harrington was orchestrating a massive fraud ring involving forged documents, embezzlement from trusts, and even insider trading on real estate deals. Marcus, her own son-in-law, was complicit, though perhaps not fully aware of the depths. Sophia, ambitious and materialistic, had been drawn in by promises of wealth and status. Eleanor, refusing to be a victim, contacted the FBI through a tip line. Agents Harlan Brooks and Mia Delgado took her case seriously, especially after Lydia provided initial evidence of wire transfers from Eleanor's accounts to offshore shells linked to the Harringtons. The plan was set. Eleanor would confront Victor at her former home, where he now conducted business meetings, using a hidden side entrance from the garden that only she knew about. She equipped herself with a recording app on her phone and a panic button linked to the agents. The confrontation unfolded on a rainy afternoon in October. Eleanor slipped into the house unnoticed, her cane muffled by the thick carpets. In the study, once Thomas's office, Victor was deep in conversation with his nervous associate, a twitchy man named Derek Voss in his 40s. "Do you want me to step out, Mr. Harrington?" Derek asked, fidgeting with his tie as Eleanor entered. "No, stay," Eleanor interjected smoothly before Victor could respond. "I'm just here for some old family documents I left behind." Victor's face tightened, his silver hair and sharp features giving him the air of a predatory eagle. "This isn't your property anymore, Eleanor. Marcus made that crystal clear when he handled the transfer." "Indeed he did," Eleanor replied, her voice steady as she approached the antique oak desk that held hidden compartments. "Just as clear as how you're using my financial credentials to fund your little empire-building schemes." Color fled from Victor's cheeks, though he masked it with a scoff. "I have no idea what you're babbling about. Your recent health issues must be clouding your judgment, Eleanor." She smiled thinly, pulling a manila folder from the drawer, a dummy file she'd planted earlier via Lydia's discreet help. "The Waterfront District project, using my credit to leverage those loans. I overheard you discussing it just now with Derek here." Derek edged toward the door, mumbling, "Mr. Harrington, I should really go—" "Sophia is confused," Victor snapped, his tone brusque. "That hospital stay must have affected her more than we thought, right, Eleanor?" Her response was icy. "My mind is sharper than ever. Sharp enough to see the web you've spun with Helena and Sophia? Sharp enough to question if Marcus truly grasps the felony charges he's enabling." Victor's facade cracked, revealing a cold, ruthless glare. "You have nothing but wild accusations. And even if you did, who'd believe a frail old woman over her own family?" Leave now or I'll have security escort you out and maybe press charges for breaking in. Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. Proof is key, you're right. She held up her phone, the recording app glowing prominently. Which is why I captured every word. His eyes bulged with rage. Hand that over! I don't think so, she said, backing away, her heart racing beneath her composed exterior. The hip ached from the tension, but she held firm. Victor lunged, grabbing her wrist with surprising strength for a man in his 70s. You're not walking out with that. Pain flared through her side as she twisted away. Release me, she shouted, loud enough to alert anyone nearby. Give me the damn phone, he snarled, clawing at it. The door crashed open. FBI, hands up! Agents Brooks and Delgado burst in, badges flashing, guns at the ready. Victor stiffened, then slowly complied, his face a mask of defeated fury. The panic button had summoned them perfectly. As Delgado cuffed Victor, Brooks checked on Eleanor. Mrs. Whitaker, are you okay? Yes, she breathed, steadying herself against the wall. And I have audio that'll make your case airtight. In the aftermath, Victor was hauled away, protesting innocence all the while. Eleanor had risked it all, entering through that forgotten garden gate to catch him mid-scheme. The recording captured admissions of fraud, identity theft, and more. But this was merely the opening act. At the FBI field office in downtown Seattle, a sterile building with fluorescent lights and the perpetual hum of printers, Eleanor sat in an interrogation room, nursing her hip with an ice pack provided by Brooks. Your evidence is gold, Delgado said, flipping through notes. Paired with the bank statements from Ms. Monroe, we've got warrants for all Harrington holdings. And my home? My savings? Eleanor pressed. A judge froze everything, Brooks assured her. No sales, no transfers until we sort ownership. Relief washed over her, but anxiety lingered. Sophia and Marcus were oblivious so far. What's next? Warrants at their home tonight, Delgado replied. Helena Harrington will be questioned. As for your son-in-law, she paused, empathetic. We'll assess his role based on your intel. Lydia entered then, carrying fresh court orders. They're raiding the Harrington offices in Portland simultaneously. We get it. This hits close, Brooks said. If you want to sit out the home raid, I'll be there, Eleanor cut in. It's my house. I need closure. 3 hours later, in an unmarked SUV parked discreetly under a canopy of evergreens, Eleanor watched her home. Twilight cast long shadows over the manicured lawn where Sophia had once played as a girl. Helena's luxury SUV sat in the drive. She'd returned from a charity gala, clueless about Victor's arrest. Sophia's car was there too, earlier than planned. Marcus wasn't due home from work. Eleanor's stomach knotted. She'd hoped to shield Sophia from the spectacle, arranging a separate interview for her at her marketing firm. You sure about this? Lydia asked, squeezing her hand. Before Eleanor could reply, the convoy arrived. Black sedans and a SWAT van. Agents swarmed the porch. Federal agents. Search warrant. The door opened. From afar, Eleanor saw Helena's poised figure falter into shock. Behind her, Sophia emerged, protective arm around her mother-in-law. Marcus appeared next, bewildered. As Eleanor approached with the agents, neighbors peeked from windows, whispering. Helena spotted her first. You! She hissed, voice venomous. This is your doing! Sophia's eyes met Eleanor's, widening in betrayal. Mom, what's happening? Agent Brooks stated flatly. Your mother provided evidence of fraud by the Harringtons. We're seizing records and devices. Fraud. Marcus echoed, pale. This is ridiculous. It is, Eleanor said, stepping forward, cane echoing on the stone path. Victor was explicit this morning about hijacking my credentials for your deals. In my own study. Helena blanched. You were here? How? The garden gate, Eleanor replied coolly. Some secrets of this house you never cared to learn. Like it's in a trust from Thomas. Untouchable without all signatures, including Lydia's. Who never signed a thing. Marcus looked between them, frantic. Mom, it's a mix-up. We were protecting you. By seizing your home, siphoning funds, propping up the Harrington scams with my reputation. Eleanor's voice held steady. That's not protection, Marcus. That's crime. Helena Harrington, come for questioning, Delgado ordered. I demand my attorney, Helena snapped, regaining composure. Fair enough, Brooks said, turning to Sophia. Ms. Langford will need your statement too. Sophia stared at Eleanor. Mom, what have you done? The reversal stung. What have I done? I've defended myself from thieves who think they're above the law. I raised you better, Sophia. Your father did too. As Helena was escorted away, she snarled, You think this ends here? Our lawyers will bury you. Your husband's in custody, Eleanor said evenly. Your wife's too. Raid's in Portland now. It's finished. Sophia's face contorted in rage as she was led off. Marcus, Ellie? Sophia's face contorted in rage as she was led off. Marcus lingered on the porch, agents streaming past. Mom, he pleaded as Eleanor turned away. I didn't know the full extent. Believe me, she paused. Maybe not all. But enough to choose them over me. His voice broke. Where do we go now? Eleanor didn't turn. The echo of her own displacement months ago rang in her mind. No joy in his pain, just sorrow for shattered bonds. In the days that followed, the arrests made local headlines. Prominent family and fraud bust. Eleanor holed up in a modest hotel suite with Lydia, poring over documents amid takeout containers and legal pads. You need rest, Lydia urged, sliding a salad her way. 5 days of depositions, your body's screaming. I'm fine, Eleanor lied, though exhaustion gnawed at her. She nibbled reluctantly. Talk about tomorrow's meeting. Sophia had requested it via her public defender, a earnest woman named Tara Klein. She claims Marcus shielded her from details, Lydia said. The power of attorney was his ploy, but she wants to cooperate. Testify against the Harringtons for leniency. Turning on them, Eleanor mused, surprised. Sophia had always been loyal to a fault. Smart move, Lydia said. Evidence is ironclad. Unofficially, she hopes you'll advocate for her. Eleanor's chest tightened. Facing Sophia meant reliving the hurt. I don't have to, right? No, Lydia soothed. But closure might help. I need to know why, Eleanor decided. The federal building's interview room was bleak. Gray walls, bolted table, one-way mirror. Eleanor sat with Lydia, nerves taut. Sophia entered, transformed, disheveled hair, no makeup, in plain clothes. Tara sat beside her. Mom, Sophia whispered, sitting opposite. Eleanor nodded. Sophia. Silence hung heavy. Tara broke it. My client wants to clarify misunderstandings. I'm here, Eleanor said, eyes on Sophia. Sophia swallowed. I never meant for this. When Marcus suggested the Harringtons stay, it was temporary. The power of attorney, a safety net. Which you abused to steal my home and funds, Eleanor said sharply. Sophia flinched. That was Marcus and Victor. They said it was for secure investments. Your future. Eleanor's gaze pierced. You barred me from my own door. Left my life in boxes. Sophia teared up. Marcus said the house was burdensome. You'd thrive in assisted living. I thought we were caring for you by evicting you penniless. That's not care, Eleanor snapped. That's vicious. I see now, Sophia sobbed. What hold did they have? Sophia hesitated. Tara shifted. Mom, you deserve truth. Deep breath. 4 years back, Marcus gambled our savings on stocks, lost it all. Desperate, he borrowed from Victor. It snowballed into their schemes. By then, he was trapped. Blackmail. Lydia nodded. Leverage. Exactly, Sophia said bitterly. Marcus warned if we resisted, we'd take the fall. The house transfer? Proof of commitment. Helena promised profits to relocate you nicely. You bought that? Eleanor asked incredulously. I wanted to, Sophia admitted. Easier than facing reality. The raw honesty echoed the girl Eleanor raised, honest when cornered. What do you want from me? Eleanor asked. Nothing, Sophia said, meeting her eyes. I don't deserve mercy, just... No, I was terrified, weak. I'll face consequences. The humility shook Eleanor. Before replying, a knock, Agent Brooks. Urgent update, Mrs. Whitaker. In a nearby room, Brooks laid out photos and files. Images of Eleanor's hospital room, her unconscious form. Medical charts with anomalies. From Victor's Portland safe, Brooks said. Timestamps odd, outside visits. Records accessed illicitly. Lydia paled. Hospital insider? A doctor on payroll, Brooks confirmed. Calls to Victor. And this, she pointed to altered meds. Dosage hike caused your infection, extending stay, buying them time for fraud. Eleanor's world spun. They tried to kill me? Prolong, maybe worse, Brooks said. Investigating attempted harm. The revelation deepened the betrayal. Sophia's story now intertwined with this horror. As the case unraveled further, more arrests, hidden assets uncovered, Eleanor pondered redemption. Not erasure, but a fragile bridge over the abyss. In the end, with Victor and Helena sentenced to decades, Marcus cooperating for reduced time, Sophia faced probation after testifying. Eleanor, reclaiming her home, began tentative talks with her daughter. Healing was slow, marked by therapy and honest nights. The Harrington Empire crumbled, but from its ruins, Eleanor forged a new family bond, stronger, wiser, unyielding. The visitation room at the detention center was brighter than I imagined, with fluorescent lights reflecting off pale yellow walls in a failed attempt to lend cheer. Michael sat at a small table, his hands clasped tightly, his face pale and drawn. He looked up as I entered, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and dread. "Mom," he whispered, standing awkwardly, restrained by the rules that prohibited physical contact. I sat across from him, the cold metal table a barrier that felt symbolic of the chasm between us. Eleanor Whitaker, that was me. A woman who had built a life of quiet strength after losing my husband Benjamin to cancer 5 years ago. Now, at 72, I was facing the wreckage of betrayal from the one person I thought I could trust, my only son. It had all started innocently enough, or so I thought. After a severe fall that shattered my knee, I underwent surgery and a grueling recovery. During that time, my daughter-in-law, Sophia, had stepped in to help with my affairs. She was charming, efficient, always with a smile that now seemed predatory in hindsight. Her parents, the Harringtons, Edward and Lydia, were wealthy socialites from the East Coast, and they had encouraged the arrangement. But as weeks turned into months, strange things began to happen. Bills went unpaid, my savings dwindled, and my beloved Victorian home in the suburbs was suddenly transferred to a trust under Michael's name. I dismissed it at first as confusion from the pain meds, but when I confronted them, the web of deceit unraveled. Margaret, my lifelong friend and a retired accountant, was the one who insisted we dig deeper. "Eleanor, this doesn't add up," she said one evening over tea. We pored over documents, and what we found chilled me to the bone. Forged signatures, manipulated power of attorney, and a scheme to sell my house out from under me while I was still recovering. We contacted the authorities, and soon FBI agents Hale and Donovan were involved. It turned out the Harringtons had a history of similar frauds, preying on vulnerable elders through elaborate cons. Sophia was the mastermind this time, using her position as a financial advisor to orchestrate it all. The day of Michael's arrest was etched in my memory. He had been complicit, signing papers without question, blinded by Sophia's influence and his own greed. "I thought it was for your own good, Mom," he had pleaded in the interrogation room. "Sophia said it was just to protect your assets." But as the investigation deepened, darker truths emerged. Agent Hale, a stern woman with sharp eyes, pulled me aside one afternoon. "Mrs. Whitaker, we've uncovered something disturbing in your medical records." My heart pounded as she explained. There were discrepancies in my treatment, medications altered, recovery deliberately slowed. The nurse assigned to my post-op care, Carla Simmons, had been bribed. "It seems they wanted to keep you in the hospital longer to finalize the property transfer," Hale said gravely. The idea that someone, my own family, had manipulated my medical treatment, risking my life, was almost impossible to comprehend. "Does Michael know about this?" I managed to ask. "Not yet," she replied. "We wanted to inform you first due to the very personal nature of this discovery." Margaret placed her hand over mine, her expression grave. "Eleanor, if someone intentionally altered your care, this case escalates significantly. We're no longer just talking about fraud and elder abuse, but possibly attempted—" "I know," I interrupted, unable to hear those words spoken aloud. The possibility was too monstrous to confront directly. "There's something else," Hale continued with visible discomfort. "We found a life insurance policy in your name, taken out 6 months ago. The beneficiary is listed as Michael Reynolds." I felt the room tilt. "Michael knew," I whispered, the last fragments of hope for my son crumbling. "He had to know." "Not necessarily," Hale warned. "The application bears his signature, but we've already identified several forged documents in this case. We need to investigate further before drawing conclusions." I closed my eyes, trying to resist this new wave of betrayal. If Michael was aware of these maneuvers, if he had been complicit in a threat against my life, then everything he told me in the interview room was a lie. That image of my true son, which I thought I had seen, was nothing more than another manipulation. "I need to see him again," I said, opening my eyes with renewed resolve. "Right now, Mrs. Whitaker, with this new information, we advise you not to," Hale began. "I need to see his face when he hears this," I insisted. "That's how I'll know if he knew." After 25 years as a financial auditor and a lifetime as a mother, I had developed an almost supernatural ability to detect lies. I had to look Michael in the eyes when this bomb dropped. Hale hesitated, then nodded. We were going to question him about these findings anyway. "If you insist on being present, we can arrange it." When we returned to the room, Michael and his lawyer were speaking in hushed tones. His lawyer leaned forward, immediately on alert. "Agent Hale, my client has cooperated fully. If you're implying he participated in any kind of—" "I'm not implying anything yet," Hale interrupted. "I'm asking for an explanation of these documents. I can't explain it because I had nothing to do with it." Michael's voice rose in panic. "Sophia handled all our insurance matters. She said we were updating our policies. I signed whatever she put in front of me." The raw fear in his eyes, not just fear of consequences, but true horror at what had been done, revealed more than any words. My son had been weak, naive, and morally fragile, but I didn't believe he had consciously participated in a plan that could have endangered my life. "Do you realize what this means, Michael?" I asked quietly. Your wife and her parents might have been planning something far worse than just stealing my house. He covered his face with his hands, his shoulders beginning to tremble. Oh God, he whispered. What have I done? What have I allowed to happen? Seeing my son confront the magnitude of his wife's betrayal, I felt an unexpected wave of compassion. Michael had made terrible decisions. He had betrayed me in ways that seemed unforgivable, but he was also a victim of the Harringtons' manipulation, another piece in a game far darker than he himself understood. I need to amend my statement, he suddenly said, looking up with new determination. I need to tell you everything I know about Sophia and her parents. Everything. A devastating revelation shattered what little remained of my world. There was evidence suggesting the Harringtons deliberately complicated my medical recovery, possibly even endangering my life. Most shocking of all was the discovery of a life insurance policy on me with Michael as the beneficiary. When confronted with this evidence, my son's genuine horror and shock told me what I desperately needed to know. Although he had betrayed me terribly, he was not implicated in this monstrous aspect of the plan. While Michael faced the true nature of his wife's actions, his determination to reveal everything hinted that even darker secrets remained to be uncovered. Despite my persistent anger, I found myself thinking that perhaps amidst this nightmare, the first fragile seeds of redemption might be born. Not forgiveness yet, but perhaps understanding. Properties. Agent Donovan spread a map across the conference room table. All acquired through the same fraudulent methods, all channeled through shell companies linked to the Harringtons. 2 weeks had passed since the explosive revelations about my medical records. I had been moved to a safe apartment provided by the FBI. Only Margaret and the agents directly assigned to the case knew my whereabouts. The investigation had grown impressively, uncovering a criminal network far wider than initially thought. And the nurse. I asked the question that had haunted me since I learned someone might have deliberately complicated my recovery. Carla Simmons, Hale replied, pushing a personnel file toward me. She worked in post-surgical care for 3 years. We've confirmed she received several payments from a Harrington shell company totaling over $25,000 in the last 6 months. She has admitted to manipulating my medication. I needed to know the whole truth, however painful. Donovan and Hale exchanged glances. She's cooperating, Donovan said cautiously. According to her statement, she was ordered to prolong your recovery period by adjusting certain medications and introducing a mild bacterial contamination during IV changes. My stomach churned at the coldness of that clinical explanation, which in reality meant calculated harm. She could have killed me. She claims she calibrated the contamination to cause prolonged hospitalization without risking your life, Hale added, her tone loaded with repulsion, as if that would soften what she had done. And Sophia, she orchestrated all this? The question almost sounded rhetorical. I already knew the answer. Edward Harrington made the initial contact with Simmons, Donovan confirmed. But evidence indicates Sophia designed the details. Text messages recovered from her phone include precise questions about your treatment schedule, medication regimen, and anticipated discharge dates. I closed my eyes for a moment, still trying to assimilate the calculated cruelty of it all. My own daughter-in-law had deliberately prolonged my suffering to buy time for their scheme. And what about Michael's involvement? Margaret asked, voicing what I couldn't. We found no evidence that he knew about the medical manipulation. Hale said his cooperation has been extensive, and we believe it's genuine. The prosecution considers his testimony crucial to sustaining the case against the Harringtons. At least a small relief. My son had betrayed me, but he hadn't conspired to physically harm me. The difference was Signe, At least a small relief. My son had betrayed me, but he hadn't conspired to physically harm me. The difference was significant, though it didn't erase the pain of his actions. "Is there anything else I should see?" Donovan asked, sliding another folder toward me. This was recovered from Sophia's private email. Inside was a series of messages between Sophia and her parents dating back almost 2 years. They had meticulously designed a plan to seize my assets, starting by isolating me from family and friends, then gradually appropriating my financial affairs, and finally relocating me to a long-term care facility once they had everything under legal control. That coldness made my hands tremble as I read. They had targeted me long before my knee surgery was necessary, seeing my physical decline as an opportunity to exploit. My hospitalization only accelerated their timeline, and this, Donovan continued, is perhaps the most disturbing. He placed before me a printed advertisement for a luxury retirement community in Nevada. It was accompanied by an email from Sophia to her parents. Perfect location for Eleanor once everything is finalized, isolated, minimal supervision, and the memory unit admits patients without too much medical documentation. Once she's there, we'll have absolute control over all visits and communications. They plan to institutionalize me, effectively imprison me in a place far from anyone who knew me, where I would be easily forgotten while they enjoyed their stolen gains. There will be additional charges based on this evidence, Hale explained. Elder abuse, conspiracy, and possibly attempted homicide, depending on how the prosecutor interprets the medical manipulation. I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak immediately. The magnitude of what they had planned, the calculated destruction, not only of my financial security, but also my freedom and dignity, was almost impossible to assimilate. "When can I go home?" I finally asked. The question that had haunted me for weeks. "The forensic team finished at your residence yesterday," Donovan replied. "Technically, you could return now, although we recommend waiting until we confirm there are no security risks." "I want to go today," I responded firmly. "I need to be back in my own space." Margaret squeezed my hand supportively. "I'll stay with you for the first few days. We can install additional security if needed." Hale nodded. "We can arrange it, but there's another matter to address." She hesitated for a moment. "Michael has requested another meeting with you. He'll be transferred to a minimum security prison pending trial, and he's asked to see you before that." My first instinct was to refuse. The wound of his betrayal was still raw, and I wasn't sure I had the emotional strength for another confrontation. Yet something within me, perhaps the mother who remembered the boy he once was, couldn't refuse that request. "Tomorrow morning, if that's agreeable," Hale replied when I asked directly. "After that, his visits will be very limited until legal proceedings conclude." I nodded slowly. "I'll see him then." That same afternoon, I stood on my porch with the key in my hand, hesitating before putting it in the lock. The facade looked the same, but I knew that inside strangers had invaded my space. They had planned my downfall in a place that should have meant safety. "Take your time," Margaret said softly beside me. "This is going to be difficult." I took a deep breath and turned the key. The familiar scent of my home, the gleam of wood, the old books, the faint trace of jasmine from the sachets I placed in. The closets was now covered by foreign perfumes and cleaning products. There were traces of the Harringtons' brief occupation in subtle details. The furniture was barely moved. My favorite fern was gone from the sunroom. New blinds hung in the living room. In my study, Benjamin's antique desk had been turned toward the door instead of the window where he always worked, looking out at the garden. That minimal change hit me harder than I expected. They had erased our routines, our history. "We can put everything back the way it was," Margaret assured me, seeing my face. "Make it yours again." I nodded slowly, going through each room, noting changes and violations. In the master bedroom, my clothes were gone from the closet, replaced by Sophia's expensive dresses. My simple jewelry box had been emptied. The pieces Benjamin had given me over so many years of our life together were nowhere to be found. "The FBI recovered most of your jewelry from the Harrington safe deposit box," Hale had told me earlier. "They'll return them once they finish processing them as evidence." It was small comfort knowing that strangers had touched those intimate memories of my marriage, judging only their monetary, not sentimental value. In the kitchen, my collection of handwritten recipe cards, including those from my mother and grandmother, irreplaceable, had been discarded, replaced by glossy, modern cookbooks that clearly had never been used. That disdain felt personal, as if they had erased my family's history, a deeper wound than the financial theft. As I surveyed the damage, a strange calm settled over me. This house, these belongings, they had been violated, but they were still mine. I had survived. I had fought and reclaimed what was taken from me. The Harrington family had underestimated my resilience, my resources, and my determination. "I'm staying," I decided, looking at Margaret. "Tonight. In my house." "Are you sure?" she asked with concern. "Couldn't we start fresh tomorrow?" "I'm sure," I replied with renewed strength in my voice. "I'm not going to let them keep me away from my own home for another night." As evening fell, I sat on the back porch with a cup of tea, watching twilight descend over the garden Benjamin and I had planted together decades ago. The lilacs needed pruning, the azaleas were neglected, but the essence of what we had created was still there. Tomorrow would bring more difficult conversations with Michael, more legal procedures, the long process of rebuilding my home and my life. But tonight, I had reclaimed my space. It was a beginning. As the investigation progressed, I faced a terrifying truth. Sophia and her parents had concocted a plan far more perverse than simple theft. Evidence showed they had deliberately hampered my medical recovery with the complicity of a corrupt nurse. They planned to institutionalize me in an isolated facility and had been stalking me for almost 2 years. Although Michael seemed oblivious to the darkest aspects of the conspiracy, the calculated cruelty of what they had prepared for me was too monstrous to assimilate. Standing in my violated home, seeing how they erased traces of my married life, I understood that a long road lay ahead. Not only to recover my property, but also my sense of security. Tomorrow, I would have another confrontation with my son before he was transferred to a facility awaiting trial. A conversation I feared but could not avoid if I wanted to understand how our family had fallen apart so completely. Back in the visitation room, Michael leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, I don't even know where to start. I'm so sorry for everything." I studied his face, searching for the boy I raised, the one who used to bring me wildflowers from the yard and promised to always protect me. That boy was buried under layers of poor choices, but perhaps not gone forever. "Tell me the truth, Michael," I said steadily. "All of it. From the beginning." He nodded, tears welling in his eyes, and began to speak. As his words poured out, detailing how Sophia had slowly drawn him into her web, how he ignored the red flags because he was desperate for the life she promised. I felt the weight of our shared pain. The road to healing would be long, fraught with trials and therapy, but in that moment, I saw a glimmer of the man he could become. Redemption wasn't guaranteed, but for the first time in months, it felt possible. The Harringtons' empire crumbled in the following weeks. Edward and Lydia were arrested on multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and attempted endangerment. Sophia faced the harshest charges, her poised facade cracking in court as evidence mounted against her. Carla Simmons, the nurse, turned state's witness, her testimony sealing their fates. Michael's cooperation earned him a reduced sentence, community service and probation instead of years behind bars. He moved into a small apartment, started therapy, and began volunteering at a senior center, perhaps as a way to atone. As for me, I rebuilt. With Margaret's help, I restored my home to its former warmth. The garden bloomed again under my care, a symbol of renewal. I joined a support group for victims of elder abuse, turning my pain into purpose by advocating for stronger protections. Life wasn't perfect. Trust, once shattered, mends slowly. But in the quiet evenings on my porch, sipping tea and watching the stars, I felt a profound gratitude. I had lost much, but I had gained something invaluable, the unyielding strength of my own spirit. And in time, perhaps, the full restoration of my family. In the dimly lit visitation room of the county jail, the air hung heavy with the scent of industrial cleaner and despair. Eleanor sat rigidly on the cold metal chair, her hands folded in her lap as she waited for her son, Daniel, to be brought in. The guard's footsteps echoed down the corridor, a stark reminder of how far her world had fallen. When Daniel appeared, shackled at the wrists and ankles, her heart clenched. He was dressed in the standard-issue orange jumpsuit that sagged on his once athletic frame. Months of incarceration had stripped away the pounds, leaving his cheeks gaunt and his eyes shadowed by exhaustion. "Mom, thank you for coming," he murmured as he took his seat across the scratched plexiglass divider. No attorney flanked him this time. The decision to meet had been his alone, they said. "I came because you asked," Eleanor replied evenly, her voice a carefully constructed wall against the storm of emotions raging inside her. She had spent weeks steeling herself for this moment, replaying the betrayal in her mind like a nightmare she couldn't escape. Daniel bowed his head, his fingers interlacing tightly on the small table between them. "They've told me about the doctor, what Isabella and her family were planning for you." His words hung in the air, laced with a tremor. "Yes," Eleanor said simply, offering no more. She waited, her gaze steady, forcing him to confront the void. "I swear, Mom, I didn't know about that part." His voice cracked, the weight of it pulling at the edges. "I knew they wanted your estate, your investments. That was awful, unforgivable. But I never dreamed they'd go so far as to try to—" He trailed off, unable to voice the full extent of the plot. The tampered prescriptions, the scheme to declare her incompetent and institutionalize her in a facility where she'd be out of the way forever. "I believe you on that," Eleanor conceded, her tone measured like a judge delivering a verdict. "The evidence suggests you weren't in on the physical harm or the commitment plans." She paused, letting the words sink in before adding, "But you did know about the rest, the fraud, the theft of my property, my savings. You were an active participant in stripping me of everything your father and I built." Daniel winced, his shoulders slumping under the truth. He didn't deny it. There was no point. "Yes," he whispered, the admission hanging like a noose. "Why, Daniel?" The question burst from her, the one that had tormented her through sleepless nights and endless days of legal battles. "We gave you everything, a good education, a stable home. Your father and I raised you to value honesty, to respect the hard work of others. What happened to that young man we were so proud of? He stared at the floor for what felt like an eternity, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like accusing insects. Finally, he lifted his eyes, red-rimmed and raw. "I've asked myself that every single night in here," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The simple answer is I was scared. Scared of losing Isabella if I didn't go along with her demands? Scared of what her father would do if he exposed my role in those earlier shady deals, the ones that started small but snowballed." He swallowed hard. "But the real answer, the hard one, is that I convinced myself I deserved it all. That cutting corners, cheating a little was okay if it got me ahead. I turned into someone I hate, someone Dad would despise." The mention of her late husband, Thomas, sent a dagger through Eleanor's chest. Thomas had been Daniel's biggest champion, envisioning a future where their son would carry on the family legacy of integrity in business. "Your father would be heartbroken," she agreed, her words sharp but honest. "Not just by the mistakes, but by how you hid them, how you let greed erode your soul." Daniel nodded, accepting the blow without deflection. The DA offered a plea: 8 years down to 5 with good behavior, if I testify fully against Isabella and her folks. "And?" Eleanor prompted, her expression unreadable. "I'll take it," he said firmly. "It's better than I deserve after what I did." Silence enveloped them, thick and oppressive as the reality settled in. Her son, once destined for boardrooms and success, now faced years behind bars. The dreams Thomas and she had nurtured for him, college, a thriving career, a family of his own, had crumbled into this grim reality. "I found something at home yesterday," Eleanor said abruptly, shifting the conversation to break the tension. She reached into her handbag and withdrew a faded envelope, its edges worn from years in hiding. "It was tucked away in your father's old oak desk, in the secret compartment he loved so much." Daniel's eyes widened as he took it, recognizing Thomas's precise script on the front. "For Daniel, when the time is right." I had no idea," he breathed. In his final weeks battling that relentless cancer, he wrote a few letters. Eleanor explained softly. "This one was for you. He instructed me to give it when you needed guidance most. I believe now is that time." With trembling hands, Daniel opened the envelope, unfolding the paper as if it were a sacred relic. Eleanor watched in silence as he read, his face a canvas of shifting emotions. Regret twisting his brow, sorrow pooling in his eyes, and finally, a spark of resolve hardening his jaw. When he finished, he held the letter to his heart for a long moment before slipping it back inside. "Thank you," he said, his voice steadier now. Hearing Dad's words, it's like he's here, reminding me who I was supposed to be. "What comes next for you?" Eleanor asked, surprising even herself with the question. "After your time is served?" He blinked, caught off guard. Perhaps he hadn't dared to envision a life beyond the cell walls. "I don't know," he admitted. "My job's gone. My savings wiped out in legal fees. My name's poison now." He shrugged, a gesture of utter defeat. "You'll rebuild," she said matter-of-factly. "Not the old life that's lost, but a new one grounded in ethics this time. That's the real challenge." "I know," he replied, then hesitated. "Mom, can you ever forgive me?" Eleanor paused, choosing her words with care. She wouldn't sugarcoat the pain. "Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip, Daniel. It's layers peeled back over time. I'm still unraveling the hurt, the shock of learning what you'd become." She met his gaze unflinchingly. "I can't promise full absolution, but you're still my son. Blood doesn't dissolve. Our path forward depends on your choices from here." He nodded, a quiet acceptance settling over him. That's more than I expected. Fairer than I deserve. The guard signaled the end of their time, and as Daniel rose, he asked one final question. The house! Will you keep it after all this? Absolutely, Eleanor affirmed. It's my sanctuary, the one Thomas and I poured our hearts into. I won't let their schemes drive me out. Good, he said softly. Dad would approve. As she watched him shuffle away, his posture a bit straighter despite the chains, Eleanor felt a tentative shift inside her. Not peace, not yet, but a glimmer of comprehension. Beneath the corrupt man who'd aided in the Voss family's plot, echoes of her boy lingered, faint but real. Outside, Margaret waited in her reliable sedan, a steadfast friend who'd become Eleanor's anchor through the chaos. How was it? She asked as Eleanor buckled in. As bearable as it could be, Eleanor sighed, gazing at the barren parking lot where winter winds whipped dead leaves into frenzies. He's taking the plea, 8 years, maybe 5. Testifying against them all, and you? Margaret probed gently. A mix, grief, relief, lingering rage. But clearer now. I understand the why a little better, even if it doesn't erase the what. Margaret nodded, starting the engine. As they drove toward Eleanor's reclaimed Victorian home on Elm Street, she reflected on the whirlwind of the past year. The initial shock of waking from what was supposed to be routine hip surgery, only to discover her accounts frozen, her home occupied by Isabella and her predatory parents, Victor and Helena Voss, the forged documents transferring her properties, the manipulated will, and worst, the revelation of the doctor's role, bribed to overdose her pain meds, paving the way for a compassionate commitment to a Voss-controlled nursing home where she'd quietly fade away. The legal fight had been grueling. Hiring investigators, rallying allies, exposing the Voss empire. A web of real estate scams targeting vulnerable seniors across 4 states. Daniel's arrest had been the turning point. His initial denials crumbling under evidence. Now, with the house slowly returning to order, walls repainted in soothing blues, antique furniture polished anew, Eleanor felt the stirrings of hope. Not naive optimism, but a hard-won belief in her own resilience. That's the final touch, Margaret announced 6 months later, hanging a cherished landscape painting on the freshly plastered wall of the sunroom. Spring sunlight filtered through lace curtains, casting warm patterns on the hardwood floors. It feels right again, Eleanor agreed, stepping back to admire the space. The Voss's gaudy modifications, tacky modern fixtures, sterile white paint, had been eradicated. In their place, her personal touches. Heirloom vases filled with fresh daffodils from the garden. Bookshelves groaning under well-loved volumes. Better than right, Margaret insisted, gesturing to the state-of-the-art alarm system panel. Fort Knox couldn't compete, Eleanor chuckled faintly. The ordeal had taught her vigilance. Biometric locks, encrypted financial apps, a network of trusted advisors. No longer would she be the easy mark the Vosses had seen in the grieving widow. The azaleas are budding, she noted, peering out at the backyard where she'd spent weekends kneeling in the soil, weeding out neglect and planting hope. Gardening had... The azaleas are budding, she noted, peering out at the backyard where she'd spent weekends kneeling in the soil, weeding out neglect and planting hope. Gardening had become her meditation, each bloom a defiance against the darkness. Margaret caught the symbolism. Like you, resilient, thriving with care. The months had brought Justice's slow grind to fruition. Isabella, Victor, and Helena faced a barrage of charges. Wire fraud, elder exploitation, conspiracy to commit assault via medical tampering. Daniel's testimony, raw and exhaustive, sealed their fate. To dodge life sentences, they pled guilty. 25 years for Victor, the ringleader. 18 for Helena. 20 for Isabella, whose venomous charm had lured Daniel in. The probe revealed a broader syndicate. Dozens of victims, some deceased under dubious circumstances, now reclassified as murders. The doctor got 10 years, commuted to 7 for spilling on prior schemes. Eleanor's suburb, once eyed for Voss rezoning into luxury condos, rallied. Properties were restituted. A watchdog group formed, offering seminars on scam prevention. Eleanor spoke at their first meeting, her story a cautionary beacon. "Decided on the visit yet?" Margaret asked, pouring herbal tea into delicate china cups. Daniel's request had come via letter, his 3rd month in a low-security prison. His missives were consistent. No pleas for pity, just accounts of therapy sessions, vocational classes, and quiet remorse. "Yes," Eleanor said decisively. "Not this weekend, the library fundraiser, but soon after." Margaret's brow furrowed slightly. "You sound more at peace with it." "I dreamed of Thomas last night," Eleanor shared. "We were on the back porch, sipping lemonade like we used to. He said, 'Strength isn't avoiding the break. It's forging something stronger from the pieces.'" "That sounds like him," Margaret smiled. "Always the philosopher." "It made me think of Daniel," Eleanor continued. "Wounds don't vanish, but they can guide us to purpose, not back to the old normal, but to a wiser one." The chime of the doorbell pulled them from reverie. The security app showed a courier with a vibrant bouquet. Margaret vetted him before accepting. Orchids and hydrangeas, Eleanor's favorites. The card read, "Happy birthday wishes from across the way, Lydia Harrington." Eleanor beamed. Lydia, the new neighbor, a former art curator widowed like her, had become a confidant over shared coffees and gallery visits. Their bond, born of mutual loss, had blossomed into genuine friendship. "What a thoughtful touch," Margaret remarked. "Your circle's growing stronger." Indeed, Eleanor had woven a safety net, a knitting circle at the community center, volunteer shifts at the senior shelter, leading the Botanical Society's Rose Committee. These ties, organic and reciprocal, armored her against isolation. "I've been mulling over the foundation," Eleanor said as they moved to the porch swing. "Tea steaming in the mild air. The Thomas Hale Heart Institute?" Margaret clarified, referencing the nonprofit Thomas established for research into his fatal arrhythmia. "I want to broaden it," Eleanor explained. "Add a wing for senior advocacy, legal aid, fraud detection workshops, support for abuse survivors." Margaret's eyes sparkled. "Turning your nightmare into others' shield. Brilliant." "Exactly," Eleanor nodded. The Vosses preyed on the isolated, the uninformed. "This could change that." Thomas would applaud, Margaret said warmly. As dusk painted the sky in hues of lavender and gold, they sat in companionable quiet, absorbing the neighborhood's hum, dogs barking, families gathering for dinner. The scars of betrayal lingered, flashes of paranoia, echoes of distrust, but they no longer dominated. They'd evolved into empathy, insight, a drive to protect. After Margaret departed, Eleanor settled at Thomas's mahogany desk, now positioned by the bay window overlooking the thriving garden. She sketched plans for the foundation's expansion, partnerships with law firms, awareness campaigns, a hotline for victims. It felt right, a full-circle redemption. The phone buzzed. Lydia, confirming the flowers and proposing a symphony outing. As they chatted, Eleanor marveled at her transformation. The Voss betrayal had shattered her faith in kin and hearth, but from the fragments, she'd rebuilt. Deeper roots, broader horizons, a legacy of safeguarding. Strengthen the pieces, she whispered, echoing Thomas's dream wisdom. Not erasure, but evolution. A scar turned into armor, perhaps even art. 6 months post-confrontation, Eleanor embraces renewal. Her home revitalized, garden flourishing. She learns of the Vosses' severe sentences. Their empire crumbled. The community bands together against predators. New alliances, friends like Lydia, volunteer groups, enrich her world. Inspired by a vision of Thomas, she agrees to visit Daniel, seeking not oblivion of the past but meaning in its wake. This resolve manifests in expanding the Thomas Hale Hart Institute to champion elder rights, alchemizing trauma into triumph. Though the fracture endures, it births growth, bonds, and profound insight into life's essence. In our fleeting days, this tale affirms that deceitful souls will be exposed and held accountable, while the steadfast of heart claim the justice and serenity they merit.